Dr. David Beers, CEO of Halia Therapeutics, please do come to the stage. Dr. Ronnie Rajan, VP, AI and Applied Sciences, M42. Albarah El-khani, SVP, Operations of Integrated Health Solutions Platform, M42. Paul Jones, CEO, BioPharma Solutions, AI Life Sciences Platform, M42, Islam Eltantawy, who's the General Manager of IROS, and Sid Bahal, the Marketing Manager, Omics at M42, and our wonderful expert moderator. Please do come to the stage and allow me to hand you the mic like a baton as you take over. Audience, please give them a warm welcome.
Thank you, Amandeep. Good afternoon, everyone. We're here to talk about biotech, genomics, drug development. If you look at the drug development process, I think we have to agree that process is ready for disruption. It can take about 10 to 15 years to bring a drug to market. It takes approximately $1 billion at times to make a drug, and the failure rates can be up to 90%. What if we said AI and large data could actually transform this? Let's ask our panelists this. Paul, may I start with you? Could you give us a brief overview of the Emirati Genome Program and the industry engagement that we can have around it?
Certainly. So the Emirati Genome Program was a program that was initiated 4 years ago in the UAE, focused on sequencing the whole of the local population in the UAE. So local Emiratis, approximately 1 million people, looking to collect samples from those individuals, extract the DNA, and sequence that DNA as the basis of a proposition that says we'd like to transform our healthcare system, shifting the emphasis from a focus around illness management towards prevention, early detection as a core objective. But actually, as part of that, clearly, as I mentioned on the previous panel, we probably today understand less than 2% of what's in that genome in terms of that can be translated into clinical impact today. There's 98% still to be discovered. And so how can we engage the global research community, the global industry community around that endeavor to help us unlock more value over time? And so the principle is using the expertise from a global perspective to get access to the data and to facilitate unlocking that value and tailoring, identifying new targets, looking at optimizing clinical trials, and in fact, looking at across the breadth of the value chain of what it takes to discover and develop new medicines, tailored towards the nuances of specific populations, and how might we use something like the Emirati Genome Program to stimulate that engagement. The only other thing I will add is the question, open question, is how, if you were to weave AI into that agenda, can you accelerate that even more? So that $1 billion spend, I think I've heard stories it's even $2 billion spend per molecule. How can you accelerate each component of the value chain and then integrate that platform together to really drive an accelerated, a model ultimately that would deliver better, cheaper, precision medicines that are tailored towards those populations that are going to be defined by their national healthcare boundaries?
Thank you, Paul. We're going to stay on that theme a little bit around the Emirati Genome Program. So Albarah, M42 has taken the Emirati Genome Program, created value from a clinical perspective, and also now looking to unlock value for the wider ecosystem. Could you touch on that before we sort of start really going deep into the AI and the drug development piece?
It's a very important question, Sid, and thank you for that. But I think it's important to understand the nuances and the differentiating factors between the Emirati Genome Program and other PopGen programs. The Emirati Genome Program has a vision to sequence the entire Emirati population of 1 million people. Now, what does that mean? You can move from a population genome program to also a personalized genome program. And that is the key differentiator here. We're very fortunate in the UAE that we have the resources to do the sequencing, but more importantly, the vision of how to utilize this rich data set and integrate it seamlessly within the diagnostic odyssey. Just, I would say that there's a significant number of programs that we worked on, but one of the key driving factors is we have a high prevalence of rare diseases in the UAE due to the consanguinity as a part of sort of common culture here. And the prevalence is, I would say, 6 times higher than most global benchmarks. So it is a need for us to address rare diseases and the high prevalence of rare diseases. So diagnostic odyssey is very critical. We have some use cases where we've seen 8 years it's taken to diagnose someone with a rare disease. Using the Emirati Genome Program dataset, we managed to reduce that by tenfold. But we're also trying to implement programs that don't just look at reducing the diagnostic odyssey, diagnosing people more accurately and precisely, but also eliminating disease. And a prime example is a premarital screening. Premarital screening became a mandate in October of 2024. And so far, since we became a mandate, we see roughly about 8% positivity. But more importantly is that these couples are now counseled and offered solutions like IVF to choose a healthy offspring. So we anticipate that the next generation to come, we will reduce the rare diseases, inherited rare diseases in the UAE by over 75%. That in itself is a massive achievement in the investment we've done in the Emirati Genome Program, going from a pop gen to a personalized gen, sequence once, use for life strategy.
Thank you, Albarah. I think just to lay the foundation here, the clinical impact is really important, even when we talk about therapy, because ultimately the therapies have to go back into the health system and treat patients that exist in the health system. So to cap off the Abu Dhabi ecosystem, I'd like to ask Islam to give us a quick overview around IROS and its work and its vision going forward.
Thank you a lot, Seth. So IROS, we consider ourselves as a collaborator with the pharma and the biotech and the regulator. We collaborate with them in order to bring this from discovery to delivery and have the products in the market. We collaborate with them to enhance the clinical trial, run the clinical trial, find the right cohort of patients related to those clinical trials and bringing it to the right sites and making sure that we have the right medication available. And this is the main part. Along with this, we have a lot of process that including the protocol development, the medical writing, the biostatistics, and all of those aspects. And this is why most of the people saying that the CRO or IROS is just a service provider. We don't consider ourselves like this. We consider ourselves a collaborator that work with the biotech and the pharma in order to make sure that we have the right molecule in a short timelines and making sure that we have the right data that will support our patient.
Thank you, Islam. You used the word partnerships. With that word, I'm going to ask David to introduce Halia Therapeutics and what they've been doing.
Sure, yeah. I'm very excited to be here and to tell you a little bit about what we're doing at Halia Therapeutics. So at Halia, we're believers in genomic information informing drug discovery. We actually did a human genetic experiment where we actually identified individuals that had high-risk genetics for developing Alzheimer's disease. And what we do that's a little different than most groups is we don't just look for the high-risk genetics. We actually look for people that have high-risk genetics and don't get the disease, because we think that that's actually where the human experiment's already been done to show us how to effectively treat people that have high risk for developing a certain disease. And so we actually did that. We found there's a very well-known risk factor for Alzheimer's called the ApoE4. So ApoE4 has been very extensively studied all over the world. And if you have 2 copies of ApoE4, your chance of getting Alzheimer's is very, very high. And so what we did is we found a family that had ApoE4 in the family, and they had a lot of Alzheimer's, but not everybody in the family actually developed Alzheimer's that had this genetics. And so we actually went to work to figure out, why do the people that have the bad genetics don't get the ones that don't get the disease? And what we discovered is they have disease-modifying genes. So they have genes that aren't providing risk, but actually protection from that risk. And by connecting those dots, it opens up new opportunities to treat people that have high risk. So using the Emirati Genome Program, we could, for example, identify people that have risk and then identify families that don't get this disease that we've identified they have a risk for, and that opens up new possibilities for therapeutics. And so it allows us to tailor those medicines for the right individuals. So we actually, at Halia, we've discovered 2 different medicines that target a pathway that we discovered from this family that turns off chronic inflammation. So if you have inflammation in your brain, it's one of the determining factors for developing Alzheimer's disease. And we figured out a new way to turn that off using a drug that we discovered from a human genetic experiment. And so the reason why we're sitting here in Abu Dhabi is we want to take advantage of the information that in partnership with these guys, the people that are here trying to develop the genetic and genomic information and connect those dots to open up new therapeutic possibilities. And so we're going to bring new medicines here, we're going to develop new medicines here, and we're going to do it in collaboration and partnership with our friends here on this stage. So that's why we're here, and that's what Halia is focused on.
Thank you, David, for that. I'm not sure if our colleague Tiago is around. The moment you use the word family, he would have been excited because he loves talking about the familial structures in the Emirati genome program. So I think the data set will be quite rich for what you're trying to do. Ronnie, there were the two letters, AI, very famous, probably even more famous in Abu Dhabi of late. Can you touch on how AI is looking at the drug development value chain and disrupting it? Because as I said in the opening, I think that is a value chain that desperately needs disruption.
Yeah, absolutely, Sid. Thanks for the excellent question. So when you think about AI and the whole drug discovery life cycle, AI has been playing a role in each and every step of the drug discovery cycle, starting all the way from target discovery. So if you look at AI has been helping in mining data sets, large data sets that include literature review, clinical data sets, genomic data sets to find optimal targets to actually target, optimal genes or disease-causing genes to target, and also in optimizing molecules that impact or affect that target, right? So AI has been utilized in predicting the binding efficacy of targets with molecules, looking at prediction of the toxicity of these molecules when they bind to targets and so on. So that is a preclinical phase. Beyond that, even in clinical phases and in clinical trials, AI has been effective in actually improving site selection for clinical CROs like Islam and team. AI has been helpful in patient selection, in protocol optimization, and so on. And we've seen progress in many companies working on multiple stages of this entire life cycle and delivering value across the value chain. Now, what many AI companies typically do is just throw large models on large data sets, and what I'd really appreciate, companies like Halia doing is to do things differently and not just do AI for the sake of doing AI, right? Where they really shine apart is trying to integrate the biology aspect into the AI development, and that is an essential piece that's missing among most AI development. At M42, we follow a similar approach where we focus on training foundation models. Typically with drug discovery, we want to work on genomic foundation models. There have been genomic foundation models across the world, but they have, like I said, typically been trained using genomic sequence as a natural language, but genomic sequence is more than just a sequence of nucleotides, right? There are many hidden interactions that are still unaware, that researchers are still unaware of, right? So all these long-range interactions are difficult to kind of encode when you train models. So what we've taken is, we've taken a new approach of training genomic foundation models with a new novel tokenizer called BioToken. We created this new GFM called BioFM, which currently is the state-of-the-art model for multiple genomics benchmarks. We'll be releasing it soon, hopefully by next week, and we have the paper under review at Nature. Beyond that, mostly where we function, I think, is with likes of IROS at the CROs that need a lot of support using AI to kind of optimize their trial, and optimize the protocol design, optimize site selection and patient recruitment. And there's a lot of documentation also they require support with. And we actively work in developing clinical large language models, fine-tuned for specific use cases and applications, built into a platform that CROs like IROS can actually leverage to fine-tune their trials.
Thank you, Ronnie, for a very elaborate answer. I must say, my best friend in life is ChatGPT, so I absolutely love AI. Albarah, we sit here in Abu Dhabi on some very unique data sets. We've got Malafi, which is the clinical data set, which is very well structured. We've got the genomic data set. We've got Shafafia for the insurance. How do you think all of these data sets amalgamated are going to create value for the biotech sector in Abu Dhabi?
Everyone talks about creating data, but in reality is the value is the insights from the data. So I think it's really important that we don't just create data sets that sit in isolation, but they sit very much augmented and integrated together. Because the true value comes from correlating all the findings from across the entire data sets that we have. We believe in the One Health strategy, whereby anything that touches, is ingested, it goes near a human being, affects a human being. We believe in the value of environmental data, causal agents of disease from the environment that's unknown. But the only way to expedite the discovery component of finding these unique causal agents is to integrate these data sets in a meaningful manner, in a seamless manner, but also to have this data set accessible to global partners who can research, do R&D on this data, and expedite the discovery process. Keeping our data in a locked vault is not going to serve anyone. So it's really important we federate, we keep the sovereignty of the data and secure, but we integrate this data to bring as much value. So I believe the true transformation in drug discovery, in health provision, and in disease understanding is really by augmenting, aggregating, integrating, and making this data accessible to the global market.
So can I just comment as well on the data piece? Look, clearly very supportive of the fact there's huge value in the data. But the point I would also make is there's huge value in the sample that the data's extracted from. And the biobank piece is a critical component here of what we do. And even more than that, going even further back in the value chain, if you like, is the patient that generated the sample, or from which the sample was collected, that the data was generated from. And I think that link between the patient, the sample, and the data is so critical here. We have an ecosystem, even under the M42 umbrella, that allows all of those components to be brought to the fore. And it's that connection between the data and the permission that the patient has offered through the consent that they've given to potentially allow more data to be collected, for more sample to be collected, or in the future to be recruited to trial, that is so critical to the ecosystem play here that M42 has even under its own umbrella, never mind the broader remit across the wider UAE. So that for me is a really, really powerful value proposition that I know for a fact that is recognized, for example, by global pharma, by biotech companies, because that ecosystem is not always present in other parts of the world. And so the genomic data set is a core value proposition, but it's the system that sits behind it, that generated it, that's equally valuable.
Right, thank you for that. We're running out of time, so I'm going to go back to Ronnie. Ronnie, we've got a lot of data. I touched on that a minute ago. How would you use that in the world of AI and building large language models to build proprietary technology out here in Abu Dhabi?
Yeah, I think Abu Dhabi is placed probably at an unprecedented level across the world, right? There is not another data set like what we're kind of curating at EGP. First of all, looking at the genomics data alone, like Albarah touched upon, I think the diversity, the scale at which we're collecting the data set, the depth at which we're collecting the data set is unprecedented. But to top that off, we also have the leadership of the country, which had the vision to think about multiple data sets and multiple streams of data curation, not just genomics, but also phenotypic data with the HIE, Malafi, collecting all of the phenotypic data from clinical assets, integrated with the patient's Emirates ID. So what you're looking at is a comprehensive data set of phenotype, genotype, and also social determinants of health, and like Albarah touched upon, environmental factors that impact health. I don't think there is another data set in the world at this stage and this level of comprehensiveness, right? And for the bare minimum necessity of training an AI model is the data. If without comprehensive data, there is no AI. So it's mostly garbage in, garbage out, right? So for training a good model, this is exactly the kind of data set we need. And this is going to revolutionize the way we even train models, the way we think about research, right? So right now, all the models that we train in-house is using public data sets. But once we have collaborations with the DOH, if we can get access to the right data sets at this level and scale, I think there's a lot of work we can do around training custom models using the local data to improve precision medicine, precision cohort, clinical trials, and so on. There's a lot we could do.
Perfect. To end, David, I would like to ask you, you've been in the therapy business for a while. You've seen it evolve. You've seen AI come in. Where do you see AI taking the therapy business?
Yeah, it's a great question. I guess I'm getting old because I can look back at my career. I've discovered 17 drugs that I've taken into human clinical trials, and gratefully I've been blessed to have worked on a couple drugs that have been successful. But I look at the need that's out there, and I look at the desire to be able to allow medicines to be available to everybody around the world and not just to be accessible to a select few number of people. And so for me, what I wake up every day thinking about is how can I be more effective and how can I move these programs forward faster and more efficiently in the past than we have in the past. And I think, as was mentioned, we've generated a lot of data to train and to develop algorithms that can accelerate drug discovery and development. And I think we're starting just at the very beginning now to see all of these pieces come together. And I think we're sitting in what's going to be a golden age of new therapeutics that's going to be driven by these integrated processes and algorithms that Paul and have been mentioned that, combining all this information together. I was trained by a very famous clinical scientist that said there's no bad drugs, there's just bad clinical trials. And I really believe, Islam, that's real, that we fail because we're treating the wrong people. And I think that AI is going to not just help us find drugs faster, it's going to help us find the right people to treat. And I think that's where the big changes are going to happen. I think it's going to happen quickly, and it's going to be fun to be part of that. And I'm excited to try to be here and help push the boundaries of what we can do with using artificial intelligence to drive drug discovery and development.
I was going to end on that note. Islam, do you want to give a 10-second soundbite on what David just mentioned?
I'm agreeing with Dave that there is no bad drug, there is a bad clinical trial or targeting the wrong people. And this is what we are hoping, that AI that help us to find the right cohort, optimize the timeline to reach what Albarah mentioned, from 15 years of finding the drug to 5 or 3 to 5 years. And this is our hope. This is how we will use the AI tool to support us and optimize all the timeline. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. It was a great discussion. I think it's a great note to end. If AI can enable medicine for everyone, I couldn't think of a better note to end. On that note, thank you, everyone, for being a great audience. Amandeep, over to you.